What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Casual Big Ten podcast. Today is Monday, September 18th. I'm trying to get the date down because I'm a little distracted. I'm joined today by my boy JR. He's from Big Banters, the Big Ten Huddle. It's a podcast. I was on his show last week. He's joining me this week. JR, how are you doing today?
Oh man, I'm doing great. I watched some NFL football today. All three of my Ohio State, yes, three. Okay, we do include Burrow. All three of them lost. They're 0-6 now, so that's a little depressing. But the Buckeyes won, so I'm feeling okay about that. But it's a good time. We'll make it through. But yeah, doing great. How are you doing today, Kent?
I'm doing good, except for the Lions lost, and partially because of Ohio State's Smith and Jigba. He was
Okay.
not helping the cause today. There was a ton of Big Ten guys like on the field on both sides of both teams, so it was fun to just watch some of those guys. But I was disappointed that the Lions blew it. So whatever, though, it's
Hey,
gonna happen.
your boy Charbonnet though, he's on the Seahawks.
Yeah. I did see him play. Good for him.
Yep.
I didn't like that he was running all over the Lions, but it's all good. It's all
Yeah.
good.
Kenneth
Let's take
Walker and Smith and Jigba. Yeah, there's a ton of Big Ten guys in there, man.
Witherspoon was on defense for the
That's right. I forgot
Seahawks.
about him. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know how I
Hutchinson.
forgot Kenneth Walker.
Yeah. Hutchinson for the Lions. So there's
Hutchinson.
there's a
Yeah,
bunch of guys out there. But
for sure.
anyways, before we jump into this, I did want to give you just a minute. Go ahead and properly promote all your stuff, what you got going on, and kind of what you do throughout the week for the Big Ten.
For sure, man. Yeah, I do the Big Ten Huddle. It's kind of a weird podcast, but basically, I bring on personalities and insiders from all over the Big Ten. Just talk through the games that went on. Kind of sometimes preview other games, and then just like news and notes, topics and stuff, and not like the standard ones. So, like if you listen to like the Joel Klatt show or something like that, you'll get like the big news stuff, and we do cover those things too. But like we literally showed the video of Kirk Herbstreit dogging Ohio State fans and talked about that. So if you find stuff on Reddit or you find stuff on Twitter, like this is kind of the podcast for you type of deal. We just had Mark Rogers on the last episode, so that was super cool. Broke down the week 3 games, kind of like we're going to do here. But yeah, you can find us at the Big Ten Huddle on Twitter, the Big Ten Huddle on YouTube. And then if you just want to follow me, if you're an Ohio State fan, I suggest it. If you're not an Ohio State fan, I might talk trash about your team every now and then, but it's all in good fun. JR's underscore rankings at JRS underscore rankings.
So I have that up on the screen for people watching on YouTube. You'll be able to easily find JR on Twitter and get to his podcast that way. Great podcast. I listened to it. I was actually listening to it before you invited me on. And then I've been listening to it since my episode, which wasn't that long ago. But he had Aaron Brightman on last week, too, which I've also had on my show. He was awesome. Rutgers guy. We're going to talk about some Rutgers. We're going to talk about each team. We're going to try to cover all 13 of these games, what happened this weekend. But before we do that, one last thing I wanted to ask you, what was your overall vibe of the conference this week, just in general, without like mentioning a specific team? Because I have some thoughts, but I want to know what you're feeling after this weekend's games.
The Big Ten West is the Big Ten West. I don't want to be the guy that's like, oh, Big Ten East is far superior because the Big Ten East, they have their own struggles. But I think Iowa's the only undefeated team left in the Big Ten West. I've been super disappointed with Wisconsin, man. I thought that team, and we'll get into them later, so I don't want to give away too much, but like I just thought that they would be kind of where they were before, kind of some of this stuff happened with Paul Chris and everything, but they're just not looking like it. And that's not to say they can't eventually, but just not looking like it right now. And Minnesota, that's cool that they were close with North Carolina, but it's one of those things where it's like I had high hopes going into the weekend. I hope that the Big Ten would at least be 3-3 with the ACC, but IU couldn't pull it out. So here we are, 2-4. It is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, that was obviously a big focus going into this week because we had so many matchups against the ACC. But I'm kind of with you. I just felt like even the big dogs, like in the East, except for Ohio State, they performed well. But even some of those games, it just felt like the conference overall, like just was kind of like dragging through the mud this week because it's the third week. A lot of these teams are playing their third non-conference game or their second non-conference game. They're kind of getting bored with that. I'm excited to get into Big Ten play, and hopefully the level of competition and maybe the sharpness of some of these games will ramp up. Do you think that'll happen?
I think so. I think one of the things, and I've said this for years, the Big Ten West is the most competitive division in all of college football. And one of the reasons why is because all the teams really do play so similar with each other that you are literally seeing ground and pound, strong, tough defenses with, heavy defensive lines, heavy offensive lines really going after each other. And it's one of those things where once you get into conference play, the ball is normally better because it's more interesting. You're seeing teams that are more like each other doing that. And even teams in the East. I mean, it's going to be really, really exciting. They pulled up a graphic the other day on, I think it was Fox, of the Michigan Penn State game, the Ohio State Penn State game, and then the Ohio State Michigan game. Man, those are going to be three of the best games of college football all year long
Yeah.
for us to get to watch because that stretch right there. And I really do think that those three teams will probably go 11-1. I really do think there's going to be something like that in there. Now, Michigan has the best chance to go undefeated there, but I just really feel like there is something brewing this year, especially with all of the. It's not just been the Big Ten, but all the conferences. Nobody seems to be pulling away as like this super strong favorite. Georgia struggled, Michigan struggled, Texas. It didn't look like it. If you weren't locked into that game,
Yeah.
it was 10-10 in the fourth quarter. Like
Yep.
that, they struggled. Florida State, like, what are you doing? 18 penalties against Boston College, man. So I think that this is going to be one of those seasons where it's just super interesting, and we'll definitely have a 2-loss team in the playoffs. I think that's happening this year.
Oh wow, that's a pretty bold prediction. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I like that though. I'm definitely going to keep my eyes out for that. Let's reel it back into our conference though, the Big Ten. We got a lot of games to get to. What we're going to do today is we're going to just kind of go through each game, kind of tennis back and forth. I'll do a game, you do a game. If you want to add anything, or if I want to add anything to yours, we'll do that. But we'll try to zip through these games as quickly as possible with so much going on. And the first one that we have today is the first game that I watched yesterday. And also, I do want to say thank you. 13 games. I was happy to go into yesterday, like just kind of keeping my eyes on. I think I have 8 of them today. So, like, I had 5 or 6 or whatever you're going to do today that I didn't have to watch, like, as closely. And that was really nice going into the weekend. But Wisconsin and Georgia Southern to start the day yesterday. To me, it felt like that these two teams, and like you said, Wisconsin's so disappointing. It felt like these two teams were pretty evenly matched. And like I said, if you didn't watch this game, kind of like what you were saying about Texas or whoever you were just talking about with the 10-10
Yeah,
game, that was Texas, right? Yeah, okay, yeah. So if you weren't watching this game and you just looked up at the scores, 35-14 to end the game, you're like, okay, Wisconsin won handily. That was not the case. I thought that Georgia Southern was going toe-to-toe with them. I think they outgained them. I forgot to write that part down, but they outgained them. It was close throughout, and every time that Georgia Southern got in Wisconsin's territory was when all the turnovers started happening for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt like they had chances to go score, and then they just couldn't. Just so many interesting things in this game. Malusi was like the first one, and I think I'm saying his name wrong. I've always been saying it wrong. Is that how you pronounce it too?
That's how I say it, but I'm like you. It's probably wrong.
Yeah, yeah, okay. He was the only guy getting snaps in the first half. Braylon Allen was nowhere to be found for some reason. And then he came back in the second half, and that's kind of when Wisconsin started pulling away. They had interceptions on the 34, the 43, and the 26 of the Badgers. So they were on the other side of the 50 and threw 3 picks on that side of the 50 throughout this game. And then they also missed a field goal at halftime. This game was just so much closer than I thought. Wisconsin's defense, I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, and then I'll kind of let you talk about Wisconsin some more. They get credit for all the interceptions that they get, all the turnovers that they got. But it was really Georgia Southern's mistakes, in my opinion, that gave them the ball. Now, they were putting a little bit of pressure on the quarterback. Davis Brins, I think his name was. Put a little bit of pressure on him to kind of force some things, but I just don't think Wisconsin's defense is that good to, first of all, to get that many turnovers. But secondly, when they start playing a Big Ten team, I think they're going to be in trouble. Couple other quick notes, and then, like I said, I'll let you take over because I wrote a bunch about this game. I was really excited about this one. Davis Brin had the most passing yards in all of college football for a player that lost yesterday. So that's pretty interesting.
Crazy.
I think they threw 5 interceptions, which is insane. Every time Georgia Southern turned it over in the second half, Wisconsin scored, whether it was Braylon Allen or Malusi. I think even Mordecai ran one in. And then another quick fact about Wisconsin, why I don't think they're very legit. I texted you this yesterday. Liberty played Buffalo, which is a common opponent for
Mm.
Wisconsin. Liberty scored 55 points on Buffalo at Buffalo yesterday. Wisconsin scored 38 on them at home when they played Buffalo. I'm just not sold on Wisconsin. I think that they're due for a loss, and it's coming soon. Another loss, I should say.
Yeah. My thought after I got done, because I didn't catch all this game, but I caught kind of snippets of it because I kind of turned over at the end of the first half. But my thought in this game was kind of like you with the whole Georgia Southern thing. And my thought was like, they're lucky they're playing Georgia Southern because Wisconsin had no business winning on
No.
that day against any competent team. And I'm not saying Georgia Southern is bad or anything like that, but they just don't have the players that a Power Five team should have. So Wisconsin, they were lucky they were playing them. They were lucky that Davis Brin, who I think he started, I just looked it up. I think he started like 2 years. Yeah, he started 2 years at Tulsa and then transferring to Georgia Southern over in the Sun Belt. Like, he should be better than that. But at the same time, I guess when you get excited and get to going through all that. But yeah, no, and I looked it up too. They did have Georgia Southern had 455 total yards. Wisconsin had 451. So they did by 4 yards outgame Wisconsin. I just don't think this team is anything without Braylon Allen. I mean,
Yeah.
Braylon Allen is going to be the one that takes them as far as they can go. And the rumor I heard was that Braylon Allen went to the coaches and was like, guys, I want to take this team to the next level, kind of do that stuff. And they were like, okay, sit this game. You're kind of dealing with an injury, sit this game. And then after the first quarter it was over, it was like, no, you can't sit this game. We're in trouble. Like, Braylon Allen, come back and save,
Yeah.
save
Yeah,
us.
exactly.
Again, that's nothing super official. That's just kind of stuff I heard. But
That does make sense, though, to me.
yeah. Well, you think about it, Power Five teams do this against G5 teams sometimes. I think it was 2 years ago, CJ Stroud had some kind of shoulder thing going on. They threw Kyle McCord out there against, was it Akron or Ball State or something like that? Some MAC team they did that with. Last year, Michigan just decided to have a QB battle in the middle of the season where they gave both QBs a game. Like, if you have good enough players, you should be able to just sit one of these guys. But, Wisconsin, they're just not on that level this year. And, they could probably get to 7 wins. But I think at this point, bowl game is a success for them because you just want that momentum going into the next season.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see how they come back next week, and maybe they can right the ship and play a little. Like I said, all these guys are playing so many non-conference games. Maybe once they get into this conference play where they're going week back to back to back against Big Ten guys, they'll sharpen it up a little bit. All right, I'm going to let you start this one. It was the only Big Ten on Big Ten game of the weekend. It was Penn State. It was at Illinois. What happened in this game, JR?
Oh, man, I loved watching this game. This was a fun one because everything that everybody thought going into it would happen didn't really seem to happen. Yes, Penn State's defense played really, really well, but Drew Aller wasn't the spectacular specimen that people thought, oh, this is Drew Aller's coming out party. And I know I saw some people say like, oh, his first true big road game test in the Big Ten. And yeah, that's true, but this Illinois team is not Illinois last year. Like, he should have been able to do a lot more. And I'm not dogging Drew Aller here. I think Drew Aller is great. Some of the throws he makes on the run is awesome. But let's be honest. This is what happens when you have a new starter. He kind of goes on the road, has a little bit of a struggling game. Penn State is super fortunate that their defense is awesome, that they have one of the best, if not the best, running back pair in the country. Michigan, I'm sure, has a few words to say there, but it's one of the best, arguably the best.
I've been saying it's the best. I've been saying that since the summer. I think it is the best.
Yeah, they definitely have a strong argument for it. But I think Johnny Dixon on the defensive side was awesome in this game. It wasn't a pass breakup, but he did like hit a guy and force an incompletion. He had one of the 4 interceptions on Luke Altmaier. It seemed like Chop Robinson was just living in the backfield this game. I think they had something crazy like 20 some hurries on Luke Altmaier or something like that. Like just wild. They had 3 pass breakups. Like just wild what Penn State was able to do. And honestly, like I was just talking on my podcast with Sonny from the Illini cast about this. He's a Illini podcaster. Like he's walking away from this game saying like, I feel good, not that we lost, but Luke Altmaier kind of took some of the bumps, some of the bruises. I think Illinois fans are kind of accepting what this season is. Like it sucks because you want Johnny Newton to really have a good season.
Yeah.
But you kind of just accept what is going on and what is going on here. But Luke Altmaier, like he did struggle through 4 interceptions, and 6 of his 15 were from behind the line of scrimmage. So, when nearly half of your completions are, behind the line of scrimmage, where typically the defense is that kind of is a struggle. But
do you think his picks were his fault though, or was it the Penn State defense more?
I think the Penn State defense gets some credit, but I also think that the Penn State pass rush gets some credit there too, because they were throws that I don't think Luke Altmaier would have thrown if the pass rush wasn't there. It almost looked like he was trying to hurry things up in some of those, which makes sense because, like I said, 23 or 20 some hurries, Chop Robinson living in the backfield. So I do ultimately think it was the credit to Penn State's defense, but just the whole defense together. I mean, when you have the pass rush they have and you have the corners they have, more interceptions like this are going to happen. That's probably, if not the toughest defensive scenario they'll face, one of the toughest defensive scenarios that Luke Altmaier will face all year.
Yeah. Yeah, that defense is good. I mean, like you said, we're just kind of waiting for those big matchups for Penn State. Like, what are they going to look like against Michigan, Ohio State? That's going to be, I mean, I can't wait for that. But, hey, I'm excited about every week of football, so I don't really care if we don't get that every single week. All right. I'll take the next game. We have Rutgers and Virginia Tech. I am going to ask you to help me with something here. I have dubbed Rutgers America's team. And I need you to help me just make this worldwide known that we are going to have Rutgers as America's team. I just think that they're gritty. I think they're easy to cheer for. Love the coaching staff. Love the players. Like, they're just really fun to watch. They have Virginia Tech coming to town, and Virginia Tech's bad. Look, I don't think that they're a very good team at all. And I think that when they scouted Virginia Tech and they watched the Purdue game, they said, we can expose these guys on the ground, and that's exactly what they did. I didn't see Rutgers play last week, so yesterday was my first introduction to Kyle Manungai, which is a fun name to say.
Yeah.
This is absolutely bananas. 16 carries, 143 yards, 8.9 yards per carry is insane. 3 touchdowns. The game started off, there was a fumble. Rutgers scored it immediately. It felt like the game was like over as soon as you blinked. I heard a lot of people on Twitter, like and even in my power rankings, like replies, people talking badly about Gavin Wimsatt. He didn't have to do anything this game. Like, there was no reason for him to go back there and throw the ball 35 times. Yeah, I just thought that Rutgers played really well. Like I said, they saw the advantage on the ground and they took it. Massive game next week. They're going to Michigan. I think that if Rutgers even keeps it close at Michigan, first of all, I think that they could win. That would be ridiculous. I think it would be crazy if it happened. I don't think they're going to. Yeah. But it's not going to blow my mind if they go in there and upset Michigan if Michigan has a bad game. If they keep it close, though, I think that nationally they'll get a little bit more recognition as a team that could be reckoned with. And I think that they'll get some more exposure even in that game if they can keep it close. If they get blown out, no one's going to talk about them the rest of the year.
Right, yeah, I'm right there with you on this is America's team. I commented on a Big Ten post, was it yesterday or today, where they posted a highlight of Rutgers, and I was just like, listen, every single person needs to be rooting for Rutgers right now.
Yeah.
None of you have any reason to hate Rutgers. Okay, like
Absolutely.
they have done nothing. They have been nothing. Give them their flowers. But yeah, I totally agree. Like Gavin Wimsatt, yes, he only threw for what 40 yards, 50 yards, something like that. But the dude ran for almost 100. The dude
Yeah,
had a touchdown on the ground. Like, and that's kind of what I'm seeing from this Rutgers team is they take what is available and what's going to happen. You know, Gavin Wimsatt has thrown some good balls.
absolutely.
It's not been terrible this season. Yeah, it wasn't last game, but you know he's kind of done what he needed to do. But my favorite thing about Rutgers is if you're ever watching them, watch when they get into like 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 1, because I don't think they have stats on this, but I swear if there was a stat for like most touchdown runs on 3rd and 1 or something like that, I'm confident it would be Rutgers because they just seem to burst through the hole, Monungai, whoever it is, and either get a long run or get a touchdown because I don't know what it is, but for some reason that's just what they're great at, and it's exciting when it happens.
They have to have that. They definitely have like the third down conversion stats, but I don't know if they're keeping
Yeah,
stats on like downs per like what down they scored on. I don't know if
yeah.
they're doing that, but that
That
would
might
be
even be
interesting.
too in depth for PFF. So
Yeah, I think that's a lot. That's a lot. All right. The most lopsided game of the weekend was Ohio State. Western Kentucky came to town. What do we need to know about this game? I actually didn't watch this one at all because I knew you were going to talk about it. I'm
yeah,
excited to hear what you got to say. Who was good in this
yeah.
game?
Kyle McCord was really good.
Okay.
Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. was good. Emeka Buka, he was good. But the player that I think that isn't getting enough love is Travion Henderson in this game.
Mm-hmm.
He had 13 attempts, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. But the stat that really blew my mind was 58 yards after contact. If
Wow.
you ever watch Travion Henderson, that's not his game. He is not a bruiser, run you over and then break. You know, he's a juke you out of his shoes kind of guy. And of course, somebody who follows Ohio State more than most people. The thing that I saw with him was he was legitimately trying to seek the hole and hit it, regardless if there was a guy waiting for him, a few yards back. He was just trying to hit that hole and go forward as best he possibly could. And every now and then, it resulted in some bigger plays because he was able to break the tackles. Now, again, this is Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
He's not going to hit those holes and break, a Rod Moore tackle or a Will Johnson tackle or a Kalen King tackle as well. But, he is going to be able to get some yards off of those. And I think it's encouraging for Ohio State fans to see. But at the end of the day, this is what Ohio State should do.
Yeah.
For the first time this season, they did what they should do. And Ohio State fans should be happy about that. But they did what they should do. Nothing huge here.
Yeah, I mean, this one was over so quickly. Like, I looked at the score and I was like, there's no reason to even turn this game on.
Yeah.
YouTube has this, like, multi-view function, too. So, like,
Yeah.
there was, like, all these – I was trying to look at, like, which one I should watch, and I was just like, I don't even need to see the – if any of them included Ohio State, I just went to the next one. I was like, I don't need to watch this. I think it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
All right, next game that I have is going to be Minnesota versus UNC. I talked about this a little bit on the Kickstart episode last week that I did. UNC and Drake May were a little bit, like when I looked up his stats and I started watching some highlights, I thought they were a little bit like less overwhelming than I thought they would be going into the third game of the season. He hadn't put up the numbers, like the Heisman numbers that I was kind of expecting when I looked at it. I predicted that Minnesota would lose this game. I thought that they would keep it a little bit closer because of their defense. But you look at Drake May and you look at Ethan Kalika-Manis, you have 400 yards and 2 touchdowns for Drake May, almost 400 or over 400 yards. And then Ethan has 133 yards, 0 touchdowns. To me, that's kind of like the difference in the game. The quarterback play in the passing attack was just so lopsided. Like I said, I was surprised that Minnesota's defense couldn't hold them in check a little bit better. Maybe the teams that they played before this were not as good as we thought they were when we saw that Minnesota defense. UNC outgains Minnesota by 216 yards. Big takeaway for me in this game was that it looks like to me Darius Taylor is the guy in the backfield for Minnesota. I think I actually wrote this down. He had 22 carries. There was 8 rushes for the rest of the team. Sean Tyler, like I thought he was going to be the man when they started this season, and he has been put firmly on the sideline because of Darius Taylor. And Darius Taylor's been playing good. He's actually really good out of the backfield, too, catching the ball. He had some nice catches in this game. Just couldn't do enough by himself. I don't think that Minnesota should be necessarily like embarrassed by this loss because UNC is a really good team, top 25 team on the road. You don't need to like put too much thought into this, but you do have to bounce back from this and go get a win next week. I think UNC, this is not Big Ten related, but I think UNC is one of maybe 3 teams that could win the ACC this year. Really good. And then one last note I had about UNC because this kid went off. Nate McCollum, he had 15 catches, 165 yards. That was good for 5th in college football this weekend. So just a great game for UNC. And like I said, just kind of surprised with Minnesota's defense. Did you see any of the highlights from this game?
I caught a little bit of it.
Yeah.
I have 2 thoughts on it. One, Darius Taylor is the guy. If you don't know, so if you guys follow 24/7, they have some really good sites and then they have some really crappy sites. And it just kind of depends on them. I'm not going to mention the crappy ones, but Minnesota's site is fantastic. They have awesome guys who cover it over there. Unfortunately, they have like a podcast or anything like that. But if you read their stuff, they do a great job. And all of the Minnesota insiders were calling this. They were like, Darius Taylor, like, pay attention to this guy. And so I was actually saying it before week 1. I was like, watch Darius Taylor get more more carries than Sean Tyler. Of course, it didn't happen. So, people raked me over coals for it. But, now I'm feeling a little bit better about it. I was like, okay, guys, it just took a week. Like, it's like the rookie running back in the NFL who it takes a week or 2 before they give him all the carries, he's
a freshman. I don't know if people know that either. He's a freshman, so.
Yeah, and he was not a super highly rated recruit either. He really buys into PJ Fleck from what I hear, and he is one of those guys that PJ Fleck is just like you've done everything I tell you to do. You have the talent, you're going to get rewarded, and when you do what PJ Fleck wants you to do, more often than not, you're going to put up stats in that offense because he designs it around you. And then my other thought was this was really the game that I was thinking the entire time, like. The Big Ten West needs to play the Big Ten West because, Minnesota does have a good defense and they did disrupt Drake May a little bit in there. 2 sacks, 2 interceptions. I think they did a pretty good job of stopping the run. But unfortunately, Drake May is just too much of a playmaker. And you don't have quarterbacks like that in the Big Ten West. Usually, I mean, every now and then you do, but usually you don't. So it fits Minnesota's defense a whole lot better. But I would caution anybody to think that, Minnesota's out of the race for the Big Ten West at this point, because I really do like that team. And I think they really could give Iowa a run for their money. And in the Big Ten West, they're probably my second or third favorite to win it right now.
I mean, after you've seen everyone play from the Big Ten West, it's like, well, who is going? I mean, I don't think you can count anyone except for Northwestern out. It's like, who is good? I mean, I think all of them have a chance to win it. I mean, even Wisconsin could turn it around still at this point.
That's true.
Even though they didn't play that well. So, all right, you had the Indiana versus Louisville game. This was a great game. I was watching it too, even though I knew you were going to talk about it. This was such a good game. What happened in this one?
Dude, I was locked into this game. So if people don't know, I live in Indiana. And I'm about a half hour from Bloomington. So I really do root for the Hoosiers pretty hard. But it's much different than Ohio State football.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's kind of fun. But IU, they failed on 4th down attempt at the 1-yard line. It was super heartbreaking, but their offense did not look terrible in this game. I mean, in the second half, they had a 3-play, 54-yard drive with one of those big plays to really set them up there. They had a 13-play, 97-yard drive with a touchdown. And then that last drive with 5 minutes left, they went 89 yards and they got down to the 1-yard line and were getting ready to punch that in. But unfortunately, Tom Allen just doesn't know how to call plays, which, what are you going to expect? That's one of the reasons why the guy is probably going to lose his job. But I've said this for a while now. Tom Allen is going to make a very good defensive coordinator someday. He's not a head coach. That's not his thing. That's not who he's made to be. But he's a good defensive mind, and he will make a Big Ten team or another team very happy at some point when he's a defensive coordinator for him. But, I mean, my biggest takeaways from this game were just that Taven Jackson He is really, really good. His arm isn't quite what you want at the college level yet, but he's still really good. He's going to make a lot of plays in the future. He's really going to, I think IU is probably going to win a game this year that people count them out of. I'm not saying Ohio State, Penn State, or Michigan, but I do think another team that people go into that game, they're like, oh, yeah, IU has no chance. I do think they're going to win one of those, and it's going to be primarily because of Taven Jackson, because the dude is electric. He's dynamic, and I think that he actually fits what Tom Allen wants to do on offense pretty well. I mean, it's one read and run. Like he doesn't have to do a whole lot thinking back there, and he can just use his feet if he ever gets in trouble. So I like IU more than I think most people do.
I like IU too. I think their defense has been playing pretty good. I think that what we're missing from them is just the consistency on offense, just like way too choppy. Like they'll go, like it felt like in this game, it was like every time I looked up, they're punting again. I'm like, God, guys, come on, let's put a drive together, or
And that
even
even
not even a
happened a little.
scoring drive, just like let's get down the field a little bit
Yeah.
further.
That even happened a little bit in like 2020 when they had Michael Penix.
Yeah,
I mean, Michael Penix, he was, people forget he was at IU, but man, he was the dude. But even every now and then, it was like, what is happening to this IU offense right now? They just went 3-and-out. In no way, shape, or form should they have gone 3-and-out 2 times in a row. But, unfortunately, I think that's just kind of the product of a Tom Allen offense
yeah,
because, like I said, he's a defensive guy. That's really where he's at.
yeah. All right, I have Iowa and Western Michigan. Western Michigan coming to Iowa. I was financially invested in this game in the form of a fourth leg of a parlay that did not hit. So I'm pretty pissed off at Iowa right now. I'm going to just get this shit out of the way right now. Excuse my French. Why are we throwing with less than a minute to go? I don't care who's in the game. I kept seeing on Twitter, everyone was like, it's the backups. They're getting their reps. You're up by
Yeah.
24 with a minute to go. And like I said, I was financially invested. If I was on the other end of it, I would have been jacked. I would have been like, good job, guys. Way to score that
Yeah.
touchdown at the end. But Iowa wins 41-10. Once again, this is just like the Wisconsin game for me with Georgia Southern. That score is not the indication of how close this game was.
Yeah.
Western Michigan was winning most of the first half. And it goes back to kind of what you said about just not having the guys. They didn't have the horses, no pun intended for Western, to keep up with them in the second half. At halftime, let me make sure I get these notes right. I had Iowa. They scored right before halftime. That's what put them up 14-10, and that's how they started the second half. Let's see. I said that we talked about this on our big bet episode on Friday as well. Is Cade McNamara really helping this offense at all compared to last year? It just feels like they're doing the same stuff they were doing last year. The breakout guy or the star of this game, he's not really breakout because I've been watching him now for a while, but LaShawn Williams, 12 carries, 145 on the ground. I'll just say that I think Iowa's defense has some problems. They're not the best defense in the world, but as we were saying, in the Big Ten West, they might be good enough to get stops against the offenses that they're playing against. Case in point, this Western Michigan game, they were right in the game, but then they just started making a couple of mistakes. And the way that the style of play for Iowa just kind of put them to sleep in the second half. So Iowa pulls away. They cover, the over goes, everything misses for me. And like I said, Iowa 41-10. What do you think about Iowa this year?
I think I'm a little bit higher on them than you are. I think that their defense is very, very good. I think Phil Parker knows how to put a defense together. Do I think they're the defense that they were last year? No, but I also think their offense is a little more improved than they were last year. I totally
Is
get
it
what you're
though?
saying.
Is it?
Well, the thing that I think is different is I do think that Cade McNamara has a level of leadership to him.
Okay.
Last year I watched Iowa and I saw Spencer Petras. The dude had no
Oh yeah.
leadership to him. I don't want to say he didn't have any juice. That seems like a personal attack, but he wasn't that fiery guy you kind of needed. And I don't think Cade is the most fiery guy either, but he's not afraid to get with his teammates. He's not afraid to kind of fire him up and try to do what he can. I mean, it's hard to fire a team up when you're not scoring very many points, but I feel like he has a bit more of that leadership that will come out in kind of some of the closer games that maybe you didn't get to see from Spencer Petras. So, while yes, from a yardage standpoint and from like a stat standpoint, I don't think it's really changed. I do think if Iowa finds themselves, in a one-score game with 3 minutes left and Cade McNamara has the ball, I'm not saying he's going to drive 90 yards, but I do think that he's going to get the team up to the 40-yard line so that way they can, let Iowa's punter cook.
And let me tell you something. They will be in a one-score game with 3 minutes left, probably more than one time still this year. I think that's
sure.
not a bold prediction. Just
For
the way
sure,
they
yeah.
play, man. I just feel
Well,
like they're just I don't know. I feel
it's
like
the Big Ten West.
I'm watching this game. I'm looking at Kurt, and I'm like, does he like this? I think he likes being close.
Yeah.
Like, I think he thrives in that. He's like, all right, if we blow him out in the first half, like, everyone's going to leave. So, like, let's just keep it close, and then we'll try to put it on him in the second half, and then everyone can go home happy.
Dude, you got to keep the fans invested. He doesn't want to be like Illinois or somebody else with all their fans. I'm not trying to dog Illinois here. I just saw a picture of all their fans leaving at halftime. Or IU or somebody. He wants to keep the fans there. Let them see something the whole game.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I just didn't get it. But,
yeah,
like I said, it felt like, and maybe Iowa was just kind of playing with their food a little bit, but, like, it felt like they were a little bit closer than what that final score was. All right, let's move right along. We still got, 5 games left, so I'm going to zip through these on my end. But you could probably zip through this one. Not a lot to talk about in this game. Michigan last night against Bowling Green. What'd you see in this game?
Well, I think we saw that J.J. McCarthy is human. He can throw incompletions. But, in my mind, it kind of felt like J.J. came in a little cocky, a little arrogant, which, hey, I'm one of those people that I'm like, dude, I want my quarterback to feel that way. I want my quarterback to feel like he's coming into every game, going to own it, going to take it over. But it does bite you in the butt every now and then. Now, I think JJ, dude, he has really good reasonings for feeling that way. I mean, he's had the best QBR. I looked it up the other day. I think he's had the best QBR in all of Big Ten history through the entire season. So obviously this isn't through the entire season, but I think he's like 2 points ahead of Russell Wilson last week. So like the dude is really, really good. He's making a lot of strong plays.
That can't be true anymore, though, after 3 picks.
No, I don't think so. I haven't checked this week, but
yeah.
But that's just kind of the way it seemed to me. And I think JJ will bounce back. He'll be fine. You got Blake Corum. The dude had 101 yards on 12 attempts, 2 touchdowns. Donovan Edwards, he's going to get his thing eventually. I don't know exactly what's going on with him, but he'll be fine. I mean, that offensive line, they got 3 new starters, and Harbaugh comes back this week. So who knows? Maybe there's something actually to Harbaugh not being there. I know he's there in practice all week, so maybe feels like the coaches can't actually own the team. Maybe there was actually a downside to having 4 different coaches for 3 games. I don't know. But I don't have any concerns about Michigan. They had a little bit of an off game and they still won by 25.
Yeah.
I think you're doing pretty good if your off game is winning by 25.
Yeah, I think so too. I also want to point out that the lights last night, even though they're playing Bowling Green at night, which I thought was odd to begin with, but the light show was amazing. The lights at the Big House
saw that pregame.
Sick. That looks fun. All right, I'm going to go to Nebraska and Northern Illinois. It looks like now. Actually, I needed to ask you about this because I didn't have time to do research on this. Jeff Sims just was this a coaching decision or is he injured? What's going on with him?
I looked up this a little bit and I didn't get to read as much on it as I wanted to, but apparently Matt Rule came out early last week and said that he was injured, dealing with an ankle injury. A lot of speculation was like, oh, is he really? Or are they just going to try and bench him? I think this is similar to kind of what we talked about with the Wisconsin thing, where it's like, let's let Jeff Sims have a break. He's turning the ball over a lot. Let's just let him sit, rest it out. And at the end of the day, Nebraska was better prepared for, a bad team than Wisconsin was with, not even their quarterback in there. So, it is what it is, but I don't think Jeff Sims is in trouble. I think he's still a starter there.
I don't know, man. I was watching this game and I'm looking at, now I know you look at the opponents that they played. It's like Minnesota and Colorado and then Northern Illinois. Yeah. But this kid did look pretty confident last night. Heinrich Harburg. is his name.
Harburg. Yeah, I think.
I think he had a. I don't know if I'm saying his first name right, but that's okay. Harburg is his last name. He had a great opening drive touchdown. They get the ball back. I think it was the very next drive, and he fumbles like really close to their own goal line. And I had to like at that moment, I was like, oh no, here we go again. They're fumbling the ball from the quarterback position. This is gonna be bad. But then he came back, finished the game with 158 yards, a touchdown. He led Nebraska in rushing with 98 yards and another touchdown. In the second quarter, somebody should pull this highlight. I should probably post it on Twitter. He's running up the left hash and just absolutely trucks this defensive back from Northern Illinois. I felt so bad for the kid. But hey, like you were saying, Northern Illinois is not a good team. Not a good team. They lost to Southern Illinois, which a lot of people don't even know they have a football team. But it is nice for Nebraska to finally. I mean, you start both your games, your first two games on the road, and you're at Colorado and you're at Minnesota, some teams that were pretty fired up to be playing some games early on in the year. So I liked to see Nebraska just kind of take over this game and not have to worry about anything, not have to have anything close, limit the bad plays, limit the turnovers, and a lot of scoring drives. It felt good to see that from Nebraska. They play Louisiana Tech next week, and then Michigan is coming to town in 2 weeks. So they got one more week to really get things rolling before they play a huge opponent. I like Nebraska. Do you like them?
Yeah, as an Ohio State fan, ever since 2020, I've always had a bit of a affinity for Nebraska. Nebraska fans have always seemed to have that for Ohio State because we were kind of the two fan bases that were fighting the most for the Big Ten to play that season. Not to say nobody else was, but it just seemed like those two were kind of in conjunction fighting the most together. But the thing I like most about Nebraska this year is if they do go with this Harburg kid, I would love to see it because the dude is basically a tight end playing quarterback. Like you look at his size and look at him out there, like, you know, if Iowa was ever to put Luke Lachey at a quarterback, or if Ohio State was ever to put Cade Stover at quarterback, or you know, name any other Colston Loveland at Michigan at quarterback, that's basically what you'd see because the dude is a hoss. He's huge, and you're exactly right. On that one play I saw it, dude just completely trucked that Northern Illinois kid, and it was not even a contest. The dude is huge, and it's fun to watch him play out there.
I don't like Nebraska's jerseys that much, but for some reason, the quarterback position, even Jeff Sims, they all look cool when they're playing quarterback for Nebraska. I don't know what it is about that. All right. I've spent way more time than I promised you I was going to spend. I don't mind it as long as you don't mind it. I gave you Michigan State and Washington. I'm not sure either one of us really kept a close eye on this game. Do you have any comments about this game at all?
I watched like the first quarter. I saw Michigan State.
So you saw the whole game then?
Yeah, pretty much. I saw them just get pummeled. I mean, Michigan State had 261 total yards. Washington had like 713 or something like that. Like basically tripled, or I think even more than tripled them. It was not a contest. Michigan State, we'll get to power rankings later, but right now they're second to last for me because their players have seemed to quit. And I mean that completely. Like you look at how many guys are out right now on the injury report. Like there's like 20 guys on there, and it's clear they know, hey, we can save a year and have a redshirt year, and we can transfer after this one, after the coach is fired, even though he's not technically been fired yet. I think Michigan State has mailed it in. I feel bad for the seniors, but you know, they might win one more game this season.
Wow. I feel like that's a bold prediction. You know, their over-under was 5.5, so they're supposed to win at least 3 more.
Well, and that was even before the Mel Tucker stuff came out. So, and I mean, I think it's admirable what Harlan Barnett is trying to do, and Mark D'Antonio. I know people have their thoughts about him, but him coming back and trying to do what he did, or trying to help out the university, I think that's admirable. But at the end of the day, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of juice there, and I think the players are pretty much looking ahead. Other than the seniors, I think most players are looking ahead and seeing where can I go, or you know, what's my role on this team next year.
This will be the year they beat Michigan again, because it's always when you least expect it that Michigan State always beats Michigan.
Yeah, watch Noah Kim have like 500 passing yards.
Exactly, just like basically like pull a Kenneth Walker to bring that back. All right, we got 2 more games, but you mentioned the power rankings, and now I want to get to them quickly. I have Purdue and Syracuse. Purdue loses to Syracuse 35-20. Basically got shredded by Syracuse's quarterback, Garrett Schrader. He had 195 yards on the ground, scored 4 touchdowns. Could have scored a 5th one in the 4th quarter when they were kind of like running the clock out. He was running up the sideline. There was no one between. There was one guy that maybe could have made a tackle. They were also on the goal line a couple times. He could have scored more. I mean, he could have had 5 or 6 in this game. For me, when I'm focusing on this game, what I'm looking at is, number one, I didn't think that Devin Mockabee got enough touches, or if he did, I think he had 12 touches. He didn't get enough yards. We got to start blocking for this guy. He's a legitimate running back, and he had 31 yards in this game. I'm expecting him to do more in a big game environment, especially at home. Game like
he had
this.
3 fumbles, too.
He had 3 fumbles? I didn't see that.
I think so. I don't think he lost any of them. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he had 3 fumbles and Hudson Card had 4.
So I knew they had 7. I did have that written down. They lost 3 fumbles. The only ones that I feel like maybe I was just missing these plays. I definitely saw Hudson Card lost 2 of them. He lost 2 fumbles. I think.
It says on the box score on CBS Sports that Hudson Card had 4 fumbles, lost 3, and Devin Mockabee had 3 fumbles, but didn't lose any of those.
Okay. Well, maybe that's why I didn't consider it a fumble, because he didn't really lose them. I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Still, you got to hang on to the ball, though.
Right.
I had mixed reviews on Twitter when I was going through it last night from Purdue fans. There was like about half of them that were like, stand pat, like, we're fine, we're going to figure it out. And then I saw some people posting like, no one should go to Ross-Ade again this year. Extremely excited about seeing next week's game between them and Wisconsin, because somebody's going to have to win that game. And I'm really not sure who it's going to be, because I don't know which Purdue team. Purdue is probably the most up and down team I've seen throughout the first 3 weeks. And I just don't think Wisconsin's that good. So it's going to be an interesting game, especially for Wisconsin coming on the road next week. And any other thoughts on that game?
No, just, hold on to the ball.
Yeah. All right, the only other one that I have is Northwestern versus Duke. They got blown out. I mean, there's not a lot of – I mean, they're just going to – you talk about Michigan State not winning maybe one more game. Northwestern has I wrote this down. They have Howard coming to town in 3 weeks. Is that right? 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah.
And
that's right.
That's going to be their last chance to get a win. Ben Bryant had 1 touchdown and an interception. I think he had the other one, the rushing touchdown. I will say, though, for people that are just college football fans, Riley Leonard's a beast, though. He's very good. He is very freaking good. He had, let's see if I got this right, 200 yards in the air, 100 on the ground. He's deceptively talented because he runs, looks like it's going to be an easy tackle, and then he breaks tackles. And yeah, Northwestern bottom barrel. I forgot to put the Friday night game. Do you have anything about Maryland? What do you think about them?
I think that they showed a much better running game than I thought. I think that Virginia throwing that freshman QB in there really spun him because he was more mobile. Not that he was a runner or anything, but he was more mobile, kind of able to throw on the run than they thought. They went down 14-0, but at the end of the day, Maryland should win that game, and they did. So Maryland just falls asleep in the first quarter, and then they wake up, and then they win the game. So nothing.
All right. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of how I felt too. I was excited though, just because that game was on Friday night, and it was fun to see Maryland.
It was a fun game to watch.
Yeah, it was very fun. It was visually pleasing as well. All right, let's bring this up. It's the power rankings. I had you send me yours. We've talked about mine a couple of times. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Hopefully it doesn't cover your face too much because it's going right next to you. Oh, that's perfect, actually. Have both the power rankings up right now. I think you have them on your end as well. I debated on how I wanted to go through this with you, but I think we should kind of do it like your top 4 versus my top 4. So I'll start. I have Penn State number 1. I think they've shown the least amount of weaknesses this year. Ohio State was really impressive this week. I had them jumping Michigan, who has not been, in my opinion, as impressive scoring with the picks from JJ this weekend. Defensively, they've been really freaking good. I can't lie about that. They've been really good defensively, but I just feel like Penn State, and I think Penn State's the most complete team. I think Ohio State's shown more. And then Michigan's still really good, though. There's a big separation between 3 and 4, and I have Rutgers at number 4, which people on Twitter love. America's team, number 4. What do you got for your top 4?
Yeah, I got Michigan number 1, Penn State 2, Ohio State 3, Iowa 4. These top three, I have just kind of told myself like Michigan's going to stay at the top unless one of two things happen. Either they lose to Penn State or Ohio State, or they just have a complete dud of a game versus an opponent that matters. I give them a little bit of leeway with the Bowling Green thing, and what I do look at is their defense. I mean, their defense is super strong. They had guys out of that game. If I'm not mistaken, Rod Moore didn't play in that game, and they were still super strong. Now, again, I know it's Bowling Green, but still, like,
Yeah.
you have a strong defense. You showed that even when your quarterback struggles, you're able to pull through and unite together as a team. So I don't know. I just feel like until Michigan, maybe this week, if Michigan were to only win by 10 or 14 against Rutgers, then maybe, yeah, I'm like, okay, maybe Penn State can jump them or something like that. But I don't know. Maybe it's the Ohio State fan of me, the pessimist, but I just don't think this Ohio State team is showing enough. Kind of, like I said, they did what they were supposed to do against Western Kentucky. You should score 60 points on a defense that is that bad. You should dominate defensively. You didn't do that against IU. I guess we can give them leeway or not. I don't, because you should have done something like that. And then the Youngstown State game, I don't think people realize how much respect was kind of there because of Jim Tressel and everything else. I don't think they wanted to run up the score on them. It was kind of
Yeah.
like last year, if anybody ever saw the Georgia and Samford game,
Yeah.
where it was like Georgia kind of had respect, so they didn't want to run up the score a lot. It's kind of how I felt like with the Youngstown game. So I don't know. I feel like getting into Big Ten play will tell us a lot more about this top three. And then as far as Rutgers go, I wanted to put Rutgers in my top four if I listened to my heart, but I had to listen to my head and put Iowa up there instead because I was like, who would win in a game, Rutgers or Iowa? Probably Iowa.
So I feel like that's kind of where we're disagreeing on stuff. Is that the way I do my rankings is I'm going off what's happened so far this year, and I
Yeah.
feel I'm getting a vibe from you that you kind of look ahead to what is going to happen or what could happen. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I am one of those people that I try not to overreact to like one thing happening. So I'm a super boring power ranker because my stuff doesn't change a ton. Like
Eh,
this week I moved Michigan State from like I think ninth down to second to last. Like that was my biggest movement of the whole thing because I look at this and I'm like, yeah, Michigan struggled, but Ohio State struggled too. And what did Penn State do? They won a game by 17 on the road to the Big Ten against probably a bad Big Ten team, a team you should have dominated. So it's like, I don't know. I can definitely see why you would put Penn State above Michigan. But for me, I'm one of those people that I'm just like steady Eddie,
yeah.
not super in it for the clicks on Twitter, I guess. Not saying you are, but when I put my stuff out, doesn't normally get the clicks and the interactions that some other people get.
Yeah. I'm definitely in it for the clicks, baby. Give me all the
Yeah,
clicks. Also, I
yeah.
just realized I'm looking at my screen. I had to type these in myself. I spelled Indiana wrong. I'm not an idiot. I know how to spell it. It was just typo, everybody. I'm sorry. Um, I just look at just go one more time on this top part. Penn State's beaten West Virginia and Illinois. I mean, give me a game that is better than either one of those teams that Michigan's beaten. That's why I have them ahead at this moment, because Michigan hasn't really played anybody at all. I mean, so I can't put them up any. I mean, I know what they are. I just can't do it based on what they've done yet this year. So that's kind of how I look at it, at least.
No, I see what you're saying. I just have a hard time, and it goes completely against what most Ohio State fans want to do right now. Every Ohio State fan wants to dog Michigan for having a bad out of conference schedule. But the way I'm looking at it, it's like, Michigan couldn't control that. They had to cancel their game with UCLA, and whatever. Maybe I'm being too nice. I don't know. But even in that West Virginia game, the West Virginia game and the Illinois game, I can find stuff that they did where I'm like, you should be better than that. You
Yeah,
you should be doing something better than that. Drew Aller, I don't know if you know this, Drew Aller has had the lowest percentage of 20-yard passes thrown by a quarterback in the Big Ten. Before this last week, he only threw three out of all of them. And I think yesterday he only had like one or two. So he's not throwing the ball down the field nearly as much as I think he should. And I do think that could be an issue for Penn State at some point because they really do rely on the yards after catch of some of these receivers. And at the end of the day, it's like Olu Fashanu, I think the offensive lineman, the dude gets beat so often, not like with swim moves, but he's just not tough enough. Like he gets pushed back. He got pushed back into Drew Aller yesterday or on Saturday by an Illinois lineman that I didn't even know the name of. And this dude just started pushing him back into Aller. And I was like, man, dude, Olu, like
You're
you
like, I thought
have
this
to
was an
pull strong.
NFL alignment right here.
Exactly. Like everybody's talking about, he's a top 5 pick and he's got an Illinois kid out there pushing him into his quarterback. And I'm like, okay. So I don't know. Penn State, as much as they are good, they also have some weaknesses that I'm not too fond of.
Okay. All right. We both have, I'll zip through the rest of this. We both have Maryland at 5, so no reason to talk about that. I have Iowa at 6, and you have Rutgers. So we basically just flip flopped Iowa and Rutgers right there. We're kind of in the same range. We both have Minnesota at 7. We both have Wisconsin at 8. I'm still giving Michigan State a little bit more credit. I keep them in the top 10, I guess if you want to call it that, for 14 teams because they have 2 wins. And everybody that I have below them does not. And then I finish it out with the 1-win teams is Purdue, I think, is the best 1-win team. I think Illinois is right behind them, and Indiana. Those 3 right there, I think, are just bunched up. And once again, I do know how to spell Indiana. That's really irking me right now. And then I put Nebraska at the bottom just based on the win that they have is so not impressive. And then Northwestern, obviously, is the worst team. So finish out your 9 through 14 right there.
Yeah, Wisconsin at 9. I'm not confident in that. I could see them keep dropping, especially if they lose to Purdue this week. Nebraska, I'm higher on Nebraska than some people, and maybe it's because I picked them to win the West at the beginning of the year, and I just don't want to look wrong. But I really do like that defense. I think that defense is stronger than maybe they're getting credit for because everybody's talking about Jeff Sims and him struggling. And they've played 2 tough teams. I mean, I know Minnesota just got killed by North Carolina, but man, they played Colorado tough. It was another one of those games where like the final score didn't really indicate how tough the game really was. And then, I completely agree with Illinois, Purdue, and Indiana. Those are kind of just bunched there. And honestly, I could see those 3 being ranked in any different way at all. Probably put Illinois at the top just because I feel like they've played the harder schedule.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
it.
I could see that. I get to the bottom part right there, and I'm just like, Purdue, Illinois. Who did Purdue beat a ACC team? Illinois beat a MAC team. It's supposed to be a good MAC team, but like, it's like, is Virginia Tech? Would Virginia Tech beat Toledo? Is kind of how I do it because those are the 2 wins. So I'm like, and then I'm like, but Illinois probably should have lost that game. I don't know, man. I just that's why I could see myself flipping that though, because you are right. Illinois' schedule has been tougher than Purdue's. You're right about that.
Yeah, it's tough. And then, of course, at 14, I mean, I think we both at 14 have Northwestern. But yeah, dude, 13, Michigan State. And I'm not trying to dog the players when I say this stuff, man, but they have just quit. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't quit because honestly, if I hadn't taken my red shirt yet, I might be doing the same thing. In this day and age of college football, you can transfer, do all these things. I'm not trying to dog them, but I don't think Noah Kim's success is going to be the same, and I just think that defense is probably just going to keep getting worse and worse, and so the depth won't be there. They hit some injuries, and it's going to be tough sledding. So
I feel bad for them as well, just like you said. The
I do
seniors.
too.
You know what? But you know what? I feel bad for myself, JR, because I have battled through this podcast. I am sick. You heard me coughing. My nose is running. I couldn't have done this without you today. 13 games. We got them all covered. I appreciate you so much. His name is JR. The name of his podcast is The Big Ten Huddle. Go check it out. He's got amazing guests like me and other people coming on his show. Anything else to wrap up this show today, JR? Thanks again so much, dude. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. Had fun being here. If you ever want me back, just let me know, and I'll come back, and we'll definitely have you on the Big Ten Huddle again here soon.
All right, sounds good, man. And we will be back on Wednesday with our weekly Kickstart episode, and then, of course, on Friday with Bet Big Brad and B1G Wilson to talk about all the gambling lines, get you guys set up. Spoiler alert, we all have winning records at this point in the season. Pretty impressive so far for 3 weeks. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. JR, thanks again. See everybody in the future.